Hi there, welcome back. My name is Sheldon McLeod. This is Thinking Out Loud, and this is my opportunity here on the Saltwire Network to talk about issues that are important to me, important to community, and it's important to get the message out. And I'm not sure if you saw this story. I'm hoping you did. This is at saltwire.com, and the headline, completely unacceptable. Nova Scotia flip-flop on Fiona aid leaves homeless out of the cold. And essentially what my colleague Andrew Rankin was able to find out through this man, Robert Stewart, is that because he was removed from his apartment, where he was living was condemned, so he had to move out. He is on social assistance, but because he has no permanent address, that means he doesn't qualify for that $150 that was offered, or the $100 for every household who lost power, the $250 to help anybody remove debris. In fact, people who were on income assistance were told specifically they would get an extra $150, but this man does not qualify. And I wanted to ask Campbell McClintock about this, and Campbell McClintock is joining us. He works with Out of the Cold Community Association in Halifax. Campbell, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Sheldon.
This idea, this man's story about not having a physical address means he doesn't get this help. Are you hearing that from people that you're dealing with?
Absolutely. So I'm a street outreach worker with Out of the Cold. So on a day-to-day basis, I'm interacting with folks who are forced to live outside because they have no other option of where they can go. And many of those people are on income assistance. There's a total of 400 or so houseless folks who are on income assistance. However, because they don't have a fixed address, they're only permitted what's called an essentials amount of income assistance. And that amount is $380 per month. So after Hurricane Fiona, when the province announced that they were going to be giving $150 to all income assistance recipients, the follow through on that in my conversations with community members and income assistance workers was actually that houseless folks with no fixed address who are on the essentials amount of $380 a month were not eligible for the $150, which feels really quite like a needless and discriminatory decision that it wouldn't be very much for the province to give $150 to 400 people. And it would make a big difference to those people because folks who were forced to live outside during the storm with limited options of where to go, they found many of their things were just like completely destroyed. So that's an amount that would help them at least work towards replacing those things.
As one person pointed out, it could have bought some extra food. It could have bought, replacement for things that were damaged or lost during the hurricane. So just help me understand, if people don't have an address now, how are they able to get that money from social assistance?
So that was a change to the social assistance policy a couple of years ago. It was advocated for by many community members because it was seen as a discriminatory thing. So houseless folks can apply for income assistance and they can receive their checks either in the mail at a safe address, or if they have a bank account, they can get it direct deposit. But none of the houseless folks that I've been interacting with have received that $150 amount.
Well, that's where I'm going with this. If there's already a mechanism in place for them to receive funds through community services, why can they not be, qualify for this? Since the premier was very clear that this was money that was going to go to help specifically because of the hurricane.
Yeah, so the explanation I was given by an income assistance worker and by their supervisor was that houseless folks aren't entitled to that amount because it's supposed to cover things like refrigerated food that spoiled or damage to a house. However, reality for so many folks living outside is they have their entire lives on their backs and in their tents on a day-to-day basis and constantly have to worry about those things being stolen or destroyed. So while they may not have a refrigerator to put food in, they certainly accumulate whatever objects they're able to, and a meager $150 would go a really long way and wouldn't be much of a dent to the provincial budget.
So if doing the math is correct, the story says $12 a day. That's what folks who are getting this assistance are essentially getting, $12 a day. Another $150 in a month. I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot, but that it would be a huge help. I don't understand where that failing is taking place other than the policy decision. How can we make a difference? What needs to happen, in your opinion, to change the mind of the Department of the government?
I think the reality for a lot of folks on social assistance is that while it is somewhat a helpful amount, with the amount of inflation we're seeing lately, both with housing prices and food prices, $380 a month does not achieve very much. So this opens a much broader conversation about the need to actually substantially support people deeply entrenched in poverty to actually be able to escape those conditions. These are people that work really hard, people who care for the people in their lives, and they deserve as good a chance as any of us to be lifted out of poverty and to have a dignified income on a monthly basis. So I believe that the province needs to reassess not only this $150 payment that houseless folks didn't receive, but the meager amount of $380 a month that folks are stuck trying to plan their lives around each month.
As an outreach worker, I would assume part of what you do is to give a voice to people who don't have standing with governments or MLAs. It's not like there's a representative that explicitly represents someone who doesn't have a physical address, considering that we have a constituency-based system. How do we get their voices heard?
I think there's definitely a need in our community for there to be financial support around organizing a houseless led committee or advocacy group where their voices can be better heard. There's only so much I can do in my position to advocate and raise those voices, whereas I feel those folks themselves have a much better understanding of what's needed and where they're being failed by the government. So I think there's a great need for there to be financial and material support from people with access to resources for houseless folks to be able to have a proper voice in this political equation.
Yeah, Clinton, you have a perspective that many of us don't, which is people by their name. You have probably, I'm assuming, heard stories or situations or explanations, people telling you how they ended up in a situation where you can help them, others can help them, out in the cold can help them. I just wonder, where is it getting frustrating? I mean, we've been talking about this, and it seems like we're going backwards in some ways.
We're going backwards in a lot of ways, for sure. Lately, I'm referring to the housing crisis as Band-Aid Mountain, because we're just layering Band-Aids on top of Band-Aids instead of getting to the root cause of what's forcing people out of their homes and getting rent evicted from places where they've lived, in some cases, like 2 or 3 decades. So folks in poverty right now have a diminishing voice in the political theater of Nova Scotia right now, and it has a really dramatic impact on not only people's ability to have a dignified life, but on their ability to survive. And there's a lot of concern going into this winter, folks who are forced to live outside, that they'll even make it through. So I think there's a great need for the province to really pay attention to these voices and these experiences of houseless folks, and not just try and check boxes around things that they feel to be solutions, because the reality is folks who are outside have no prospect whatsoever of being moved inside, whether it be a hotel or affordable housing, just because there's nothing on the table. And without that, it's possible that we will see lives lost this winter.
One of the quotes in that story, if none of these funds flow to homeless people, it would seem to reflect an ironic and mean-spirited assumption that because homeless people are already so marginalized that they therefore have nothing to lose in a natural disaster. Does that resonate with you?
That absolutely seems to be the message that's being sent by the province right now. Yes, it does resonate with me. If
you have Premier Tim Houston's ear, what do you say to him?
I say we need to see tangible action as soon as possible, that the province is willing to support deeply affordable housing projects, not next year or in the coming years, but immediately. There are the resources available to get all hands on deck to get every politician in the province involved in creating housing for people. But unfortunately, where we see the priority is that there's a lot of development of high-end luxury real estate, which benefits the upper class, and that's leaving behind tens of thousands of people. So what I would say to Tim Houston is, I think it's time to put your money where your mouth is.
Campbell McClintock, an outreach worker with Out of the Cold Community Association, and I want to thank you for your continued work and for your availability to help us understand better what's going on.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for reaching out, Sheldon.